Alright, Book 2, Chapter 2, The Council of Elrond. Now, this is a very, very long chapter, and it takes a while to read it, and it's going to take some time to get through this. So let's just hit it. So this is the next day after, the big feast to celebrate what happened to the ring wraiths at the ford. And So the Council of Elrond meets. Frodo and Bilbo are both there. Now, in the movie, of course, you don't see Bilbo there, and you see a bunch of other people there that are not in the book. So I'm only going to talk about who was there in this book, because it's a little different. And first, of course, you had, as you remember, Gloin was there. So he's at the council with his son, Gimli. And then there are some elves there. You have Erestor, who originally Tolkien conceived him as a half-elf, and he was going to go on the journey, but then he changed that. And now the half-elves became, only the offspring, basically, of Beren and Luthien, Idril, and Tuor. And, of course, later, it would be Aragorn and Arwen and their kids. And you have Galdor, who was sent by Círdan the Shipwright from the Grey Havens. Galdor was originally an elf in the Fall of Gondolin. Later in the Silmarillion, he became a man. We read about him when we were reading the Silmarillion. And Legolas, who'd come from his father, the King of Mirkwood. The same elven king that we met in The Hobbit, who's here now given a name, Thranduil. And of course, Aragorn is there. And Elrond, obviously, is leading. Gandalf is there, obviously. And Boromir, son of the Steward of Gondor, who had arrived earlier that morning. Now, Gloin is there to tell them about a messenger that had come to King Dain from Mordor. Now, I've always imagined that this messenger was the mouth of Sauron, who we meet later in The Return of the King. And also to find out about Balin, what happened to him. And so anyway, this messenger had come and told them, hey, there was this thief that you knew years ago, this halfling, who had a ring with him, and Sauron wants this ring. It's just a nothing ring. It means nothing, but he wants it, and he wants to know: is the thief still alive? Where is he? And that if you find him and hand him to us, we will reward you. And he does this 3 times. He comes to them and goes away unanswered. Or I believe it was 3, or he's about to come for a 3rd. Which he does while they're, of course, at the Council of Elrond. Of course, you have to read the appendices for that. Because there's stuff that happens at this time, during all of this stuff, that's not mentioned in the book. There is some things that are hinted at. But if you read the appendices, if you read Unfinished Tales, you kind of get more of the story there of what's going on. And he does mention that Balin had left to go to Moria, not just to retake it, but also to find a Dwarf ring. But obviously that Dwarf ring is gone, because they're either Sauron has them or they were destroyed by dragons. And then Elrond goes and tells the whole story of the ring, how the Rings of Power were forged, and then that was forged, and Sauron betrayed the elves. The elves of Eregion, who forged the Rings of Power, wanted the knowledge that Sauron could give them, and this, of course, is knowledge of technology and stuff like that. And that's why they listened to him. And of course, once the rings were forged, 3 of them in secret and given to the elves and hidden, but then a 1 ring was forged to rule over all the others. And they knew they were betrayed as soon as they heard the words, which Gandalf later repeats in Orcish of what was written on the ring. Now Tolkien kind of skims through the whole history here because obviously some of it we already know. And then you have the Battle of the Lost Alliance that happens at the end. Of course, Numenor is destroyed during all of this. And Elrond says that it kind of reminded him, when all the elves and men were gathered together in this Lost Alliance, it reminded him of the alliance that was forged during the War of Wrath and when they went to fight Morgoth, and even before in the Wars of Beleriand. And this is where Frodo interjects and he's like, wait, you remember the Elder Days? And he's like, yeah, I was there. And he was there during the War of Wrath. I would assume maybe he fought during it. And of course he was in the Last Alliance, and he mentions that he was the Herald of Gil-galad. And of course, as you know, Elendil was slain, his sword was broken, Isildur took the sword, what was left, and cut the ring from Sauron's finger, and Sauron went into hiding. Of course, Gil-galad was also killed during all this. And both Círdan and Elrond went up to the mountain with Isildur and begged him to destroy the ring. And he, of course, would not do it. He said, I will take this as Weirgild for my father and my brother. Weirgild basically means mangold, and under Teutonic and English law back in those old days, if someone was murdered or some crime was committed, the fine for that was a Weirgild, kind of a compensation here. Like if, like today, when I don't know what kind of lost my train of thought there, what that was, but to try to explain this. So basically, hey, Sauron killed my father and brother, and I'm taking this as payment, basically, to make up for it. And of course, Isildur was slain in the Gladden Fields, and Elrond mentions that only three Númenorian Dunedain from Gondor had escaped from that disaster. And one of them was Otar, Isildur's esquire, who took the shards of Narsil with him, and then gave it to Valinor, but Valinor was just a child, and he was being fostered in Rivendell, which ends up becoming a tradition among all the kings, or all the chieftains of the Rangers. And so they were, eventually when he grew up old enough to become king, these would be given to him, and they treasured it. Of course, in the movie you see that it's in Rivendell, but in the book, what happened was the chief of the Rangers keep it with him, and so when Aragorn meets the hobbits back in Bree, he has the sword with him and shows it to him. Of course, broken in 2 pieces, not into many pieces like in the movie, but anyway, and it talks about the North Kingdom Arnor and the South Kingdom Gondor. Arnor fell. And eventually Gondor kind of started to decay and lose ancient power they had, and they actually had a bit of an empire at one point. But that is not the case at this time in the history. And of course, the Ringwraiths took the Tower of Minas Ithil and turned it into Minas Morgul. And of course, their watch was set upon Mordor for a while, but eventually they during Gondor's decay, they kind of stopped watching Mordor, and that's how Sauron was able to sneak back in after he was driven from Mirkwood. And then Boromir, comes in and says why he's there, and that is he had a dream, and he seeks the meaning of this dream. And then, of course, it was also Faramir that had the same dream as well. And Faramir originally wanted to go to Rivendell, but Boromir insisted, and so Denethor begrudgingly let him go. But he mentions that a host came out of orcs and Easterlings and Haradrim, attacked Osgiliath, and that a dark horseman was seen, and that everybody cowered from it, and they were deathly afraid of this horseman. Of course, that being the Witch King, the leader of the Ringwraiths, and this battle was done as a way to get the Ringwraiths passage across the river, and they can only go through Osgiliath to do it. So they then go north and go towards the Shire and try to find Bilbo, but of course Frodo has the ring, so they start chasing him, as you know. And Boromir tells them what the dream was. And if I can find it, I will read what happened there. Jeez, I can't even talk. Seek for the sword that was broken, in Imladris it dwells. There shall be counsels taken, stronger than mortal spells. There shall be shown a token that doom is near at hand, for Isildur's bane shall waken, and the halfling forth shall stand. And he does learn the meaning of that, because they do have Frodo show the ring off. The sword that was broken, obviously Isildur's sword, which Aragorn has, and he shows it off. So this is this is what Boromir heard in this dream that he had, and of course the token that is shown is the One Ring, and so which is also Isildur's bane, and the halfling being the Hobbit, which he now sees. And yeah, like I said, Aragorn shows off the sword and reveals and Elrond tells Boromir who he is, that he is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and he is descended through many fathers from Isildur, Elendil, son of Minas Ithil. He is the chief of the Dunedain in the north, and few are now left of that folk. And this is, of course, when the ring is shown off. And Boromir is kind of in denial a little bit, and so Bilbo comes up and repeats his little poem that he had written that was in Gandalf's letter that he had left for Frodo and Bree. But anyway, Aragorn talks about his life as a ranger and all the life that they have, all the rangers have, and then of course Bilbo is now told to recount his story of how he found the ring, and then Frodo is made to tell his tale of how he got to Rivendell, just to show Boromir proof that this has to be the One Ring, because if it's not, why are the Ringwraiths chasing Frodo? And that's where I'll end this video, and I'll come back in another video and talk some more about the Council of Elrond. It is a long chapter, so it would be too long of a video just in one video. So hopefully I can do one more and be done, but we'll see. So I'll see y'all later.